Welcome back to NPTEL certification course on public speaking. My dear friends, you might be delighted to know that we are going to start the lectures of week 10. We have come a long way, and in this week we will focus especially on oral presentations. Now, you might be thinking, why oral presentations? Because right from the beginning we have been talking about how to speak, in which situation, what things to take care of. But then when it comes to oral presentation, you might get yourself ready to understand that it is somehow or the other different from other speaking situations. I have been telling you since the beginning that public speaking actually prepares you to face several situations where you can display your intelligence, ability as a communicator and can prove your mettle. My dear friends, I think most of you, in whatever profession you be or you are aspiring to be, sometimes or the other will come across some such situations where you have to orally present your ideas, your proposals, your plans, in order to get the desired project granted, the desired proposal agreed upon, the desired plan of action or your desired policy, your desired product which you want to promote amongst people, you actually require a sort of approval from certain parties, and that is why a sort of expertise is required in oral presentations. Now, the question is, how is oral presentation different from other forms of public speaking? So, we are going to have two lectures in this regard, where we shall in a very detailed way not only be discussing how we can overcome several dangers and we can make ourselves prove successful as a presenter. I am often asked by many people, especially my students and those who are inexperienced in terms of speaking, as to how they can make their presentations successful and effective. I remember once somebody told me that despite the fact that he had an idea and also the knowledge of what he wanted to speak, but he could not speak and could not prove his mettle in front of the audience, and it actually became very embarrassing for him as a speaker. So, let us start the lecture and see how we can have a sort of control over the presentation that we have made and how we can make ourselves a successful presenter. Now, we have already discussed speeches, we have also discussed interviews, debates, group discussions and many more. You will find that there are certain criteria which apply to those situations as well, but when it comes to oral presentation, we have to have certain reservations. The very first thing that one wants to know and one should rather understand is, what is oral presentation? My dear friends, oral presentation, like other speaking situations, is also a face to face communication situation, and it is an extremely effective method of exchanging your information. As I said in the beginning, you want a sort of approval of your own designs, dreams, ideas, experiences and innovative plans, and you want a sort of approval from some people who are expert in that area. So, oral presentation actually introduces new vistas of knowledge. I mean, unless and until you have something new, and once you have something new which you have learnt or which we have developed, you actually want to share. Man is such a creature who cannot digest anything new that he has had. So, every individual requires the skill of presentation in every walk of their life. Now, in whatever profession you might be, sometimes unexpectedly you may be asked to speak. Sometimes they may also provide you some amount of time, but sometimes you may be caught offhand and without any preparation also you have to make a presentation. Don't you feel very embarrassed at that time? So, oral presentations actually determine one's reputation and one's future success. Now, the very question that I posed in the beginning was, how is oral presentation different from other forms of public speaking? The very first thing that makes an oral presentation, and let me also tell you that especially in professional settings, we can call it professional presentations, because you have to maintain certain regulations, and because the presentation that one is going to make has to be persuasive and informative. Now, you are not every now and then asked to give presentation, and you also do not want to give a presentation unless and until you are asked to. In the previous lectures, we have talked about conference presentations, where you find that there are call for papers, and then you submit an abstract, and then your abstract is selected, and then you are called upon to give a presentation. But then when it is a professional presentation, once again there is a demand from the organization where you are working in, or in order to promote your product, policy or whatsoever, externally you are also made to give presentations. So, it is demand based. In many organizations, you are also supposed to give presentations periodically. Now, every individual is not supposed to give presentations every now and then, but you will find that people who are at responsible positions, from time to time they give presentations to apprise people of something new that their organization is going to venture forth, some new policy that they are going to adopt, some new guidelines that they want their people or employees to follow, and that is why at regular intervals also these presentations are organized or are given. Now, the basic difference between oral presentation and speeches for that matter is that oral presentations are based on fact. Whenever you are going to say something, say for example for a budget proposal, for a technical proposal, for a project, fine. So, what one is expected to is, one has to provide one's ideas or experience which should be based on facts, because at the end of the presentation you may be asked questions. My dear friends, an oral presentation also has got time limitations. So, it is time oriented, fine. So, they provide you some slot, some time in which you can speak, fine. And then in oral presentations, you as a speaker have an upper hand, that you can also get an opportunity to make use of audio visuals. We have a separate lecture on audio visuals where we shall talk about how to select and how to make use of audio visuals, because these audio visuals can help you explain your things better and convince your audience members in the most praiseworthy manner. In oral or professional presentations, you will find that the audience members actually comprise people of special interest, special ideas, expertise. So, we have specialized audience. That is why you need to work more in order to give an oral presentation. And as I have been saying in majority of my lectures, that most of the speaking situations require a sort of preparation, and in oral presentations you also have an opportunity, and that at times becomes mandatory, that after the presentation is over there may be questions from the audience members, and as a speaker you are supposed to answer them satisfactorily, because you are an expert, you have given this presentation and you know better than other people. Now, how to go ahead? I mean, whenever you are going to give a presentation, you do not suddenly think that you are going to give a presentation. Naturally, you have been thinking, developing, but before giving the presentation a lot of homework is to be done. And in what manner? That is why we say there are certain stages of preparation. There are certain stages before the presentation, and that when somebody prepares a presentation, one is not only preparing the presentation, rather one is also thinking of, he is actually visualizing fine about the audience members. But then let us see that how we can go systematically. I mean, planning is very important. First you plan as to what sort of presentation you are going to give. So, first plan. Once you have planned, you will go to make a sort of research in that area. I mean, it may vary from one area to another, and once the research is done, the writing part also comes into question. And once you have written the presentation, once you have written or developed your idea, then is the time when you are supposed to give the presentation. So, much of the task is to be done before the presentation. So, when you are going to plan, what will you plan and how will you plan? As I have been saying, giving presentation is not like writing a poem that suddenly in the morning you got up and saw a very beautiful sky, and then also it started raining and you started drifting yourself into a different sort of imaginative world and you carved some lines of poetry. No, presentation is somehow different. So, in presentation you must first ask yourself, what is the aim of the presentation? Why you are going to give the presentation? Why you have been asked to give the presentation? I mean, most of the people do not differentiate between the aim and the subject. Once you know the aim, what is the aim of the presentation? Sometimes you are given the topic, or sometimes you have to decide the topic, because if you are an expert person and you want to deliver a presentation on something new that you have developed, naturally there are so many topics that will come to your mind. I have mentioned some topics, and you will find that on all these topics you cannot simply make a sort of imaginative write up, rather you have to do a lot of research. So, if you are very clear about the aim of the presentation, then you must think about the subject of the talk or the presentation. Remember, we have had speeches, but remember, my dear friend, that presentation is not speech. Why? Because in speech, emotion has got an important role to play, but in presentation it is not imagination, rather it is reasoning. And that is why when somebody has to speak on facts, it is very difficult to continue giving the factual information for a long time, both from the point of view of the audience and also the presenter or the speaker. So, the care is to be taken that while you are making the preparation, please always make more preparation, always create more content, more material than required, because at the time of presentation things are in your command, in your control. But if you feel that you are running short of time, naturally you have the facility that you can cut certain parts, fine, it is up to the presenter. But if you feel that the content is less, nobody can come to help you, my dear friend. So, a presentation arouses interest for further exploration. Not everything can be said because it is not a written material, it is not a research paper where one can go and read the complete paper. Here all one wants to know is what new things you have done. Where is the novelty in your talk, in your presentation. That is why care has to be taken while you are preparing your presentation, and you must ensure that you are simply telling them about something new which can further ignite in them a sort of interest to do further exploration. Imagine somebody is going to speak on heavy water reactors, somebody is going to speak on air traffic control. Now, all these topics will require factual information. There is no place, no room for imagination, my dear friends. Now, once you have started planning for the presentation, you will find that since the host organization has given you a time slot, you must remember that the preparations of the same do not have any time constraint. Any oral presentation lasts for not more than a dedicated time slot. However, when you are preparing, this actually should not come as a sort of obstacle, because as I have been saying that you need to have more material than required. Now, having gathered, once you have decided that you are going to give the presentation, what are you going to do? You are also supposed to think about the audience. We have had a complete lecture on audience awareness or audience analysis. We will not focus more here, but one must know, as a presenter one must know who are my audience members. Suddenly you come to know that most of the audience members actually comprise people who are going to take a decision on the basis of your presentation. Now, when we recruit new people in any organization, there are in many companies, many organizations, there are opportunities where they call the candidate for giving a presentation, and that presentation is judged by simply a group of people who are experts in that area. So, please think of the audience members, and you must also ensure that audience members actively participate in your presentation. By participate, I mean they listen to. So, analyze the background. Much of the homework while you are doing, you are also planning who can be my audience members and what is their area of expertise. Now, you might also be eager to know what type of audiences can you come across in a sort of oral presentation. I mean, there can be 5 categories of audience members, and we shall discuss them and tell you what could be their nature. It is always better to know about them rather to suddenly come across them and find that the entire talk, entire presentation has been useless. Now, the very first category of audience members actually are inverted reticent. What do we mean by that? Now, you all know the meaning of reticence. Reticence is somebody who is silent, isn't it? Inverted reticent. Such people, they do not speak during interactive sessions. So, when you come across such a sort of audience, the best way to tackle them is to engage directly with them. You know what are the other requirements of engaging them. Then there is an intelligent aggressor. Such people, they always have ego issues, and their aim is to redirect the attention on themselves. They would always like to see that the presenter looks at me only, and then whatever I know, fine, some way or the other the presenter is also in the same line of thinking. One can right away seek their assistance and appreciate the contribution of such people in order to smooth things with them. You might have at times felt and experienced also that when somebody goes to give a presentation and in front of those people who are experienced and about whom they know, they often say that Mr. X has done quite a good many research in this area, and I think I am trying to extend my ideas and experience in this regard only. Now, in a way you are winning that audience. then there is a submissive recipient type of audience. Such people are ready to accept everything, fine. In order to make them active participants, you can ask opinion based questions and generate independent thinking. Then there are some people who are always, they are pessimist type, fine. So, they always look at the dark side of things. Now, we call them gloomy pessimist. This section of audience has always a negative attitude, and what should a speaker do? Ignoring them is not a key to successful presentation. As a speaker, as I have been saying, that you need not ignore anyone, take everyone into attention, fine, into your talk. So, involve the person in the communicative process by making use of eye contact, asking at times some fact based questions with conclusive answers, fine, that will help you overcome such a sort of audience. And then we have eager cooperator. Such a person will always show you some indications through their smiles, through their facial expressions. They are always open minded, eager, and they will always cooperate and respond effectively. One should be equally cooperative with listeners or with audience members. So, when you come to know about all these sorts of people who are going to be your audience members, now you have started, because all these you have anticipated that these people may comprise my audience members or my listeners. Now, when you have done all these, then what is the next step or the next strategy? You are going to decide the topic, fine. As an entry level employee who is actually seeking an opportunity in a particular organization and knows that this organization deals in the particular area, and then there are people, you naturally if you go to their website you would come to know who is what there, and naturally these people will be your audience members. So, now decide your topic. As I said in the beginning, you should try to differentiate between the aim and the subject. So, how to decide the topic? Most of the time you will find that a topic that is challenging will always put you in a difficult situation. So, more care has to be taken while you are researching on that. But then usually people who have to give several presentations, they always have a ready made inventory. Sometimes you can also make use of reference books and organize the data if you know the topic beforehand and if you have decided. Now, once the topic is decided, you need to collect the data, gather the data or the material. So, we can begin from home, we can come across several newspapers, journals, whatsoever. Nowadays, you have internet as a source, but please try to see whether the information that you are gathering is authentic or not. Fine. It is very important that as a speaker, as a presenter rather, fine. So, you have to gather material in such a way that everything that you are going to say is supported by facts, by arguments, because during the question answer session that may cause a sort of difficulty. Now, another thing that is, when you are going to select the material, nowadays there is a problem that people always think that if they can simply bring innovative ideas, I mean new, improbable things, audience members will be very happy, they will be very much interested. But then it is always better that even if you bring innovative ideas, mix them with something familiar that perhaps may interest, because you are not talking only to one audience members, you are actually talking to so many people, to a group. So, mix familiar with strange, and if you can, because it is a very difficult task to situate humor in your talk, in your presentation, but if you can and if you feel that it is relevant, mix humor with serious points, and in order to drive home your point, there is no harm if you can also think of, while drafting your presentation, if you can think of bringing repetitions, examples and anecdotes. In this regard, it's very pertinent to take a quote by Umberto Eco, an Italian philosopher and a novelist who became famous with one of his novels, The Name of the Rose, fine, where he says that there must be communication between probability and improbability. Again the same thing, mixing familiar with the strange. A high rate of improbability runs the risk of not being received, and therefore the message must be tempered in small degree with conventionalities, commonplaces, and must be reiterated. Now once you have decided and once you have selected the material, now you might be thinking of how to weave, how to tailor your presentation, isn't it? So you are talking about the pattern. What pattern should I follow? When we are weaving it, what should be done? We should actually be conscious of making it simple, logical and clear, as we have discussed in some previous lectures also. And since it is a presentation, there must be scope for reasoning. You must reason with, you must argue with, but while arguing, please see to it that you do not ignore the supporting materials, the evidences, because they are going to help. Now having done that, the time has come that we developed our presentation. You all know that when we develop our presentation, we must be aware of our audience members, and what should we do? We should, because we know the time limit. So let us write our presentation in such an order that not only does it interest the audience, but the content is such or has been crafted in such a manner that it is properly divided. I mean, we are talking about the division. So every presentation will have three parts: introduction, body and conclusion. Now when you are going to organize your presentation, having gathered the data, you are now going to organize the presentation. So how to organize? In this regard, I think if we can remember, because there was a psychologist named George Miller, who in one of the essays named The Magic Number 7, who advises presenters that they should stick to the magic number of 7. What do George Miller mean by that? That let there be only 7 points, and out of these 7 points, the one can be introduction and the last can be conclusion. So you can situate in your presentation 5 points, and that will perhaps make it better. And he gives the evidence when he says, what about the magic number 7? What about the 7 wonders of the world? The 7 seas, the 7 deadly sins, the 7 daughters of Atlas in the Pleiades, the 7 edges of man, the 7 levels of hell, the 7 primary colors, the 7 notes of musical scale, and the 7 days of the week? What about the 7-point rating scale? The 7 categories for absolute judgment, the 7 objects in the span of attention, and the 7 digits in the span of immediate memory. Now, so as a presenter, it is better if we can stick to the magic number of 7. Now you have the material ready, the content is ready. So let us divide the presentation, and as I said, the presentation will be divided into 3 parts. First will be introduction, and you know better how much time you have to spend on the introduction. So introduction is actually the central point of your presentation, but it should not be very lengthy. It should actually be attention grabbing, and it should reveal the topic immediately. And as I have been saying that in other situations also, you will have first to establish the credibility with your audience, and then in order to make your introduction effective, see to it that the introduction is short, it is to the point. It, as many of you might find that while you are preparing the presentation, you will think of the first sentence that you will begin your presentation with. So let it be with a quotation, and we will see that when in the next lecture we shall talk about how to begin and how to close. You will find sometimes you may be dramatic also, sometimes you may be telling anecdotes as well. After introduction, you are going to work on the main body of the presentation, and if we go by George Miller's views, let there be 5 points for discussion and the remaining 2 introduction and conclusion. So it should actually generate in the audience the interest, and with the use of connectives, because if you are going to give completely factual presentation, naturally it will become very boring, and as I have been saying that not everyone can concentrate himself or herself for another 30 or 40 minutes. So, for that we will make use of connectives for which we have a separate lecture, my dear friend. Now, coming to the pattern of presentation, let us try to divide into certain segments where there can be a beginning, a middle and an end. It is better if we can divide it chronologically in a sequential manner which is actually relatable to the period. If you are going to give a presentation on the price rise or price hike of commodity, then one must also explain the surplus production, adverse climate conditions, market conditions whatsoever. I mean, all of you are experienced enough, and those who are inexperienced speakers, they also might know what it is to give a sequence to one's presentation. Now, you have the points ready and the points are to be developed. So, when you are developing the points, as I said in the beginning, make use of examples. Exemplifying is better for the audience members understanding. So, and one can follow the pattern of comparison and contrast. If you are using statistical data, you can also provide evidence from the newspaper reports or whatsoever. If you are presenting a report, say for example, you are asked to present the report for your organization, annual report. Now, you have the facts before you and you know also. Now, how will you manage the time? You know what are the key points, what are the key issues. So, as a speaker, fine, what you will do is, if there are certain terms which are very technical in nature and you find that people who are the expert in that area, they might not have been in the possession of the knowledge of these terms. So, you can define them where the argument is being situated, and then you can involve the audience who would understand things better. Now, the time has come that once you have divided and you have discussed and developed, you also would be thinking of concluding, how to conclude, what to be said in the conclusion. Actually, both the beginning and the closing are important, the introduction and the conclusion are important. So, it actually should come out of the discussion that you have made, it should be a logical inference, a logical discovery, a finding. It should actually refrain from an abrupt ending. So, as a speaker, while you are preparing your presentation, you also should ensure that not only the beginning should be very captivating or arresting, rather the end should also be as arresting as the beginning. Many people believe that if they begin with a question, fine, while they are going to end it, they will once again emphasize upon the question, but they will provide a solution to it towards the end. There are some additional tips. There should not be any room for new information, and as a speaker, when you are going to conclude your presentation, you can review, paraphrase, and you must end it with a sort of enthusiasm, and then your presentation would become very effective. Now, many people also at times asked, how should I? Because I feel that now the time has come, I should conclude, but then there should be some signals. Many people often say, many speakers, in conclusion and before I close, and the last and the most important point that I would like to make, and then in the end I would like to. Now, all these are actually some sort of indications to the audience member that you are going to end your presentation. Now, having discussed how to conclude, because we all know that our conclusion has to be very much captivating, but at the same time it is also important to know how our presentation can be related to the audience, because the success of a presentation depends not only upon the speaker but also upon the audience members. So, when we are talking about a central idea, the central idea will remain the same, but in case there has been a dramatic shift, isn't it? So, one should as a speaker try to relate it to the requirement of the audience. One also must see, because as a speaker we are observing the audience members too. So, one must always be quite attentive to the listeners, and as a speaker, as I say, that you have some amount of flexibility when you are delivering your presentation. So, you can modify your strategy by varying your pace and volume, which we shall talk about in the next lecture. Now, certain attention getters or attention grabbing situations may be created by referring to or quoting eminent persons, asking rhetorical questions, etc., isn't it? Now, once you have done all these, now is the time that you perhaps are prepared to make a presentation. But before that, my dear friend, you are ready with the content, but only becoming ready with the content is not sufficient, isn't it? You must, even on the day of the presentation when you go, or if you know about the venue, but it is always better that you inspect the venue. You must see that the venue has proper ventilation, the podium is fine, and the screen is also working well, all the gadgets are fine, and then is there a technician also, because it is only a technician that can help you if something is going to put a sort of distraction in a presentation. So, it is better to check all these things beforehand, and if we have done that, now perhaps you are mentally prepared for giving a sort of presentation. My dear friends, it is always better that we make a proper homework of our presentation, and once we have done that, I think you will always be in a very comfortable situation. And as I have been repeating time and again, that nothing but preparation is the antidote to everything. So, before we end this talk, let me make a mention of the quote by Dale Carnegie, who says, "A talk is a voyage with a purpose, a journey with a purpose, and must be charted. The person who starts out going nowhere generally gets there." So, in the beginning, all of us, we start feeling that we are not in a position, but if you have charted the path, fine, it is always better that you will go there, you will reach your destination. And I think you are also waiting for not only your destination, but the venue, which we shall discuss in the next lecture, when we shall talk about the modes of delivery and how on the day of presentation what a presenter should take into consideration. So, the time has come to end this presentation, but once again I actually advise you to make preparation in advance before going for your presentation. With this, let me end this presentation, and I wish you all the best for the presentation that you are going to give in the days to come. Thank you very much.